Hey everybody, this is Rob Smith at the Body Project here in Eagan, Minnesota. And I am continuing on my 28 days of the Pyramid for Optimal Physical Performance. And today what I'm going to talk about is absolutely one of my favorite subjects, and that's breathing. If I could only teach one subject when it comes to health and fitness, it would definitely be breathing. Why? Well, simply because we breathe about 25,000 times every single day. The unfortunate thing is probably 90% of the population is breathing at just 50% capacity. Pretty alarming if you think about it. 90% of the population breathing at only 50% capacity. Now, just to put this in perspective, I've worked with professional baseball players, Division I hockey players, professional hockey players. I've worked with professional football players and professional boxers. And every time I'm doing an orthopedic evaluation, the first thing I look at is how is a person respirating, because it has so much to do with what's going on with a person orthopedically. So when we look at not only are they being inefficient, but it significantly affects them orthopedically. So low backs, shoulders, neck, jaw, headaches, all these orthopedic challenges that people have really have their roots in faulty respiratory mechanics. So what really affects respiratory mechanics? How do people become what I would call a vertical breather? It's because of stress, injury, pain. Another thing too is just posture. People today are sitting for long periods of time with rounded or protracted shoulders. So ideally, we want to lead with our diaphragm. So about 70% of our breath should come from the diaphragm, lower lung area. And the average person, instead of being a horizontal breather and originating the breath from the diaphragm, they go vertical. Now, the problem with that is, let's start with low back. The diaphragm is your primary respiratory muscle, but it's also a secondary spinal stabilizer. So if I breathe up here vertically, I'm losing segmental stabilization here at my lumbar spine. So anytime someone has a history of low back pain or pelvic pain, even knee issues, I know chances are pretty good they're not breathing properly. So again, that's the first thing I want to be able to examine. Now, when we take a look at how to breathe diaphragmatically, we've got not only orthopedic, we've got our emotional and our physical health, but then when it comes to fitness, there are particular ways we want to respirate. And what we find today is when people go vertical, they have all this excessive tension in what's called the accessory respiratory muscles. So again, the diaphragm is your primary respiratory muscle. And these small muscles, so around the chest, the pec minor, this neck musculature, those are your accessory respiratory muscles. Well, when you start to breathe vertically, those very small muscles that are accessory respiratory muscles become primary respiratory muscles. Now, remember how many times we're breathing every day? Approximately about 25,000 times. So if I'm breathing like this 25,000 times, I get a lot of tension in. And a lot of times people come in here and they're like, oh, I have so much neck tension. Well, you look at them breathe, they're a vertical breather. And today there's so many more stressors today. What we find is, now there's two branches of the autonomic nervous system. You have your fight or flight, which is your sympathetic nervous system, and then you have your parasympathetic nervous system, which is really rest and digest. Today, everyone is really locked into this fight or flight state, and everyone's breathing up here. They're breathing short, they're breathing shallow, they're breathing vertically. And that's why so many people have problems with headaches and energy and mental clarity and the orthopedic challenges that I was talking about. So when we get into shoulder issues, what we find with a vertical breather overworking these muscles, the shoulder starts to now round. So when the shoulder rounds or becomes more protracted, what happens is these front side muscles get tight. Well, that leads to backside weakness, and then we start to develop postural faults. Now, another thing too is these muscles that allow our rib cage to expand, what happens is they develop trigger points. It's literally like someone has a vice, and we can't get this optimal expansion through our rib cage. Well, again, when we can't get optimal expansion through the rib cage and we're not breathing laterally through our diaphragm, there's no place for the air to go except up. And so what happens is over a period of time, your brain develops what's called a faulty recruitment pattern. And so what happens is your nervous system locks in that this is your norm. And so because you are breathing so many times on a regular basis, you could get, in fact, I just had a lady who came in today that had worked with a therapist for 2 months for a shoulder issue she was having, and she wasn't any better. And so I asked her what she was doing, and she showed me some of the stretches, showed me some of the exercises. That's another thing. She was doing what I would say were inappropriately prescribed exercises. But even if she was doing the right stretches and the right exercises for her shoulder, let's just say she got a massage in this area. Let's say she strengthened the backside. She was a real vertical breather. And if you don't fix those faulty respiratory mechanics, these muscles that we stretch out and loosen are just going to get tight. Again, because we're breathing so many times throughout the day. So step one, you have to start engaging your diaphragm musculature. Now, one of the things you can do is you can have a hand on your stomach, you can have one on your chest, and what you want to do is you want to breathe, you want to take an inhale, and the belly should come out. Okay, so if you're trying to relax, you're trying to reduce stress, or you're trying to facilitate a restful night's sleep, then this is how you want to breathe. You want your belly to come out naturally. So if we think about a baby breathing, a baby never breathes vertically, right? The little belly just comes out, and it's a very nice rhythmical flow. But what happens is when we get into these faulty recruitments, then again, we're going vertical. So we have to really train our nervous system that we want this hand to not move and just breathe from the belly. Now, the difference between facilitating a restful night's sleep or going into relaxation type breath, it's very different than if we're doing a breath for fitness. Now, tomorrow I'm going to get into a little bit more of some of the fitness components and how to breathe when you're doing particular exercises. But here's the one thing I want you to really pay attention to when you're breathing is start out and originate the breath. Now, you'll start out trying to develop this anterior breath so the belly's coming out, but eventually what we want is we want a lateral expansion. So I'm filling the diaphragm all the way around my back, and I'm filling my lower lungs by expanding my rib cage. So tomorrow what we're going to do is there's so much to really unwrap here with breathing. We're going to talk about the immune system. We're going to talk about how to optimize energy. We're going to talk about how to improve fitness, all by learning how to breathe properly. So if you have any questions about breathing, put them in the chat box and I'll be sure to address them tomorrow. If you got some value from the video, if you go ahead and like the video and maybe share it with a friend or family member who you think could benefit from the video as well. So just remember this, 25,000 times every day is what we're breathing. So you're either taking a step towards better orthopedic health, towards a better immune system, or you're taking a step away. So make sure you pay attention to those details, and we'll see you tomorrow.